You're listening to the Perth Property Show, Australia's only weekly property podcast by West Australian experts for West Australian listeners. Catch your latest episode every Monday at 7 a.m.
G'day guys, welcome to another episode of the Perth Property Show. As always, I'm your host, Trent Fleskins. And just remember, if you've got any comments or questions, you can post those on the Facebook page, or you can head over to perthpropertyshow.com.au and record that question straight up. James Royce is the director of Delta Risk Solutions. Why am I talking to him today? Well, I thought it was important to get someone to help us out with an explanation on the insurance side. James is an insurance broker. I guess that's the role, the job position. Look, I didn't even know until fairly recently that there were people out there, professionals out there, that could assist me with things from as simple as my house insurance all the way up to professional indemnity insurance and everything in between. So James, thank you for coming in and I appreciate your time.
Oh, my pleasure, Trent.
James, please, for all those out there who may never have heard of an insurance broker or never have thought that an insurance broker might be able to help them, please give us an explanation as to what exactly you can help with.
So there's a number of services that an insurance broker can provide. The main one being insurance products. That's anything from your residential insurance, which is your home, your car.
Just like a mortgage broker in that case.
That's right. So we can go to the market and collect upwards of 20 quotes to provide our clients with the best result. Basically pairing them with a product that's going to suit their needs and at a price point that's going to be competitive.
And I guess that big point there is, number one, we always want to make sure we're getting the best deal, but also making sure with a professional helping us that we're going to be insured when this happens.
Oh, for sure. There's plenty of policies out there for, in the residential space where you might not be covered for flood or fire. So it's important that, if you do have a client, or if I've got a client who's out in the hills, that they've got bushfire cover. So, making sure that that's my job to go through the wordings and provide them with the proper cover.
Even things like, look, we have a lot of property investors that listen every week on the show. Even things like landlord insurance. I reckon there's a lot of people out there that have their house insured, their investment property insured, and also would be under the assumption that they've got cover if the tenant doesn't pay, but actually they don't.
Business interruption, which is basically landlord's cover, is so important. So the tenant leaves the property in an unlivable condition. You're without rent for the period of time that it takes to get that property back up and running. So, having landlord insurance is really key. And there's plenty of great providers out there that can come to the party and provide a good policy and a good price.
Now, I cut you off earlier on the list of things that you can help with because I was so interested in the house stuff. Keep going with that list.
So anything from risk management. Risk management's partnering with a business to provide them with advice around how they can lower their risk profile.
What's an example of risk?
So risk, they might be storing hazardous goods on the property, and making sure that that's in a temperature-controlled room, that they've got adequate fire procedures. Might be a labour hire company, ensuring that when they employ people, they're going through the right processes and inductions.
So that would be a strategic assistance, consulting there, doing an analysis of a company and where their risk points are and then pointing them out and making sure that they've understood that risk and also assessed it to a point where they're either going to do something about it or at least sit there and know that it is going to be prevalent until that business.
Yeah, definitely. And look,
do all insurance brokers do that, or is that simply a part of what some insurance brokers might have in their arsenal?
Look, most insurance brokers should be doing that, and that's just part and parcel of the insurance broking service. But if you're going through an online portal to grab your insurance, then that's potentially not happening.
Like a financial planner, I guess, and a mortgage broker, you have to do that fact find where you're understanding the client, and then that would be the best position to get yourself in as a consultant to be able to recommend the right products. Is that what this risk management service is? It's getting the best understanding of that client, in this case being a business, to be able to then provide the right products.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, sitting down with a client and going through what their operations are like, who they are, what they do, is really key to providing them with the right advice and the right services.
What other types of insurance should we be thinking about, both as a mum and dad property investor, but also a lot of people who are property investors are also small business owners?
Mum and dad property owners should be making sure that they are adequately insured. So being underinsured is a big issue. and that potentially reduces the amount that you're going to get paid out in event of a claim.
So that's just for house insurance?
Yep, so if you're underinsured, say the property's worth $500,000, but you've only got it insured for $300,000, you're not going to get paid out enough to get that property rebuilt and recover your loss, basically.
Okay.
From an SME point of view, an overlooked product is business interruption, which I just spoke about before. Business interruption basically safeguards clients when they have claims, and it covers their income basically for the period of their asset is not functioning.
Okay, so that brings up another idea of mine, and I wonder whether insurance brokers can help with this. I'm a part of an amateur sports a soccer club, and we've had people come down before saying, look, if you break your leg playing soccer, there's a product out there for you that if you're a tradie who needs his legs to get work done every day, we'll cover you X amount of dollars for a certain amount of weeks whilst you're getting back on your feet. Do insurance brokers have the ability to help with things like that? Car insurance as well. All these things that you can bundle up as a service, or is an insurance broker like a mortgage broker specifically only able to help with certain types of products like houses or PI insurance or business interruption insurance?
So general insurance brokers like myself, we can provide pretty much everything apart from life insurance and TPDs.
Because that's a financial planner service.
That's a financial
right?
planner service. That's
okay.
Right. Yeah.
So you could really, I guess there'd be a lot of people out there who have gone and gotten their car insurance from someone because on the day they did that online, generally they got the best quote from someone, and then they went to a different company when they went and bought another house and got their insurance there, and then they got their insurance somewhere else for their investment property, and then they've got different insurance for their PI, and the list goes on, right? I assume that
happens all the time,
and I'm assume, and I haven't asked you this before, but I assume that a big part of the service as an insurance broker would be able to amalgamate a lot of these into one company who might be able to provide a much cheaper premium across these products for you to have the whole business.
The convenience of having an insurance broker is that it's a one-stop shop for all your insurance. And it doesn't necessarily mean that all your insurance has to be with QBE or all your insurance has to be with a specific underwriter. It's about making sure that your insurance broker is taking care of all your insurance.
We only have to come to you. We don't have to call the call centres.
Yeah, 100%.
How do you charge as an insurance broker?
Insurance brokers are paid a commission on most insurance policy placements.
Just like a mortgage broker or a financial planner is?
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
So we're not paying you to set up our house insurance or our PI or whatnot. It comes out of the policy in the same way that mortgage broker would get paid from your home loan.
That's right. Look, unless otherwise agreed. Because there are policies out there that are very complex and require a lot of work. So there can be fee components that are.
I assume that generally would apply to your big business clients who therefore would be asking for much more sophisticated services than
definitely.
Us general mum and dad investors.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, that's for 50 plus person entities.
Yeah, okay. Yep. And I think that is expected in general anyway. Can you give us an example of a normal client of yours who you would work with on a daily basis who is benefiting from your service?
Yeah, sure. It would generally be the tradie with one or two vehicles and their business insurance that goes along with that. So whether they're a plumber or an electrician, they have to have public liability and a PI policy and maybe a workers' comp policy if they've got an employee. And then also assisting them with their home and contents insurance and...
the two cars they've
two
got
cars,
for work.
Exactly. Yep. So putting it all together for them saves them time and money.
Just a really short one today, obviously, but I really thought it was interesting and important to get someone from your industry like yourself in to help us out with understanding that, because even for me, it's a fairly new idea, and I really do see the value in the service of an insurance broker. So I really appreciate your time. Thanks for coming in, and we'll have you in again to talk more, I think, and more in-depth insurance broking and insurance industry information and changes in the industry as things go on in the future.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
This one's an interesting suburb for me. It's not somewhere I've purchased before, but it has been somewhere I'd like to have purchased in the past and just haven't found an opportunity on the development side. Given the state of play Tuart Hill is in, it's really one of the more mature development suburbs. Most of the properties there have already been developed into something denser than it was originally, with a few options left on that development side or the full block family home side. To find out more about this suburb, we've got, as always, our number one agent in. That's Dom Ferraro from Able Property. Dom, thanks for coming in.
Thanks very much.
Dom, let's talk about some history. Let's talk about some fun facts on the pre- and post-war side and get some information as to how this place started.
No worries. Look, Tuart Hill, as the name suggests, was named after the Tuart trees that once grew extensively through the area as far back as 1800s, I believe.
Not many around these days?
Look, I know of 3 that are on the corner of Banksia and Lawley Street, just near the Tuart Hill Primary School. So they're massive trees. They're good to go and have a look at, actually.
Would you reckon they'd be over 100 years old?
I'd have to say so, for
That'd
sure.
be
That
fantastic.
size.
Yeah,
Massive.
okay. Tell me something else about Tuart Hill that I didn't know.
According to some locals, the Dog Swamp also was a part of that area where these trees also stood. So back in 1872, I believe the road was put through to go out to Wanneroo, and these trees will act as landmarks for those people making their way out, which seemed like a long way out of the city at that time.
So Wanneroo Road, I assume it was called.
Yeah.
That was there 140 years ago,
Well,
or thereabouts.
thereabouts.
And Tuart Hill, with its big Tuart trees, were essentially a safe passage through.
Yeah, but I'm guessing it wasn't a bitumen road. Mate.
No, no, guessing it wasn't cars either.
Through a swamp.
Yep. Tuart Hill, has it always been the same? Has it changed and morphed over time in terms of its location and size?
Look, it was spread out a little bit further. You might be aware that the TV stations, Channel 7 and Channel 9, were out at the top of the hill there in what is Dinella or Nollamara. So it did spread out that far, but it cut back now to Morley Drive, Wanneroo Road, Main Street, and Hodgson Street. So it's about a 2k radius there. So
not the biggest suburb, but not the smallest.
No.
So on our boundaries here are Joondalup to the south.
Yep.
We've got Yokine to the east.
Yep.
Nollamara to the north.
And
What's
Balcatta.
Balcatta on the west.
And Osborne
Okay.
Park.
Yep.
Also.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now I've got my bearings. Got a couple of cafe strips there. Got Main Street there.
Main Street is the popular cafe strip, which is getting better as time progresses. You know, we're getting more urban infill into those areas, and people are starting to use those cafes more. And activation is the word that comes to mind at the moment. That's
It's what we
do.
need, and I think I think it's good to bring this strip up as an underutilised opportunity, especially for the City of Stirling, where you've got the infrastructure there.
Yep.
Let's start getting more people in there. There's
That's
enough
it.
people in this medium-density suburbs like Balcatta and Tuart Hill to easily sustain a lifestyle that they don't have to drive to Mount Hawthorn for.
It is a shame because there are some popular spots there in Tuart Hill that I've been to, and they're great.
Well, you've lived there a while, haven't you?
I lived there for 16 or so years, and also have personally done my own developments in that area because I believe in that area. So yeah, that's a great spot to be. Very central.
Who were the people that were first moving into Tuart Hill? Are they still around these days?
Look, in the early settlements, we had people dairy farming, in that area, and in more recent times we've got the market gardens. But I've spoken to there's one gentleman down on Wattle Street who's been, I reckon he's 150 years old, but I've spoken to him a number of times. He's always good to say that he remembers cows in the area and paddocks, and and when Wanneroo Road was a dirt track. So
and Dog Swamp was actually a swamp.
Dog Swamp was an actual swamp, but post-war, we started to see blocks be developed, the quarter-acre lots where people built their own houses.
Isn't it interesting to think of a place like Tuart Hill being somewhere like a Banjup or
out of
or
Thomas
a
Road
Wandie? Thomas Road. Isn't it
yeah.
amazing? Because that's what our generation is looking at, going, I reckon that will split up into blocks soon. That's what Tuart Hill was like 70, 80 years ago.
Correct. So not too sure about their transport back in those days. But
Well, it probably felt the same.
horse and cart.
Yeah, well, from Tuart Hill to Perth probably feels like Thomas Road to Perth these days.
Go post-war, you started to see, actually before that, there were the little cottages that you would see, but then your quarter-acre blocks started getting bigger homes. But even so now, you wouldn't see too many of those post-war homes anymore. There's probably 3 or 4 left in the area that I can think of. The rest have been developed, and increasingly the 60s and 70s when we started to see a real boom in that area.
Is that when they started developing as a rezoning in that area, or is that where you just saw more of an infill?
Duplex.
Yep.
Not so much the quads in that area, but 60s you started to see flats also.
Well, we've still got some.
There's still some around.
North Beach Drive,
is very prominent with those type of flats, which were, I guess, were an entry point for young people at that time. So it is today.
Do you think they're still they still have utility, those flats, or do you think it's time to go?
There's so many of them, mate. It'd be a hard job to get rid of, although there's so many different owners. But look, there's new legislation coming out with the change in strata that you may not need to be unanimous to sell those.
Well, that presents an opportunity to buyers in itself, doesn't it? Have you seen any of that coming about where people are starting to bank them up?
Not too much into it. There was one complex sold as a whole, but it was only one owner.
Okay, that's one guy who's done pretty well for himself.
Yeah,
yeah,
yep.
That's a lot of rent.
Yep, definitely.
All right, so we've spoken about the people that were there. Who's buying off you these days?
Well, it depends on the product. Where quarter acre block has been developed into a quadruplex or a triplex. Now, the triplex developments that have come through have a larger villa, which has a theatre room and quite a large living space. So I'm starting to see, actually not so recent, but the last couple of years, middle-aged or retirees buy these properties. They've gone away from a large block they might have had out a bit further in Kingsley, Padbury, Duncraig areas where they've got a big block and a pool and a garden and trees and all this maintenance. They've had enough. The kids have gone, and now they're choosing to buy these. Look, they're in between a villa and a house. They're about a couple of hundred square metres. So
you can entertain.
You can entertain in there. And one of the big things I know, I've sold to a couple of European people, that as long as they can get their big dining table in the living space and have all their family there, they're happy.
Yep.
And that little extra, well, I won't say little, but the extra room for the theatre, which is separate to the the living space, which they can close.
It
off.
makes a big difference. It turns it from being a unit into a home. It's not a massive home.
So surprisingly, I've started to see the middle aged to retirees buy those, whereas traditionally I would have seen young professionals buy them.
Why do you think that's balancing out? Is there less of an incentive with the stamp duty?
The stamp duty is certainly an issue for young buyers, particularly when you get into the 6 range. That's another $20,000 that they've got to come up with. So a lot of the ones that I've sold in recent times they've sold a home, they have the money, or they're a cash buyer. Whereas once you start getting into the 6s, it's a bit of a stretch.
Okay.
So,
do you think that I'm pushing you towards this, Dom, the changes that have happened recently? Do you think that's had an impact on your market in Tuart Hill, given that a lot of that stuff is that 400s range?
Yeah, look, I've been selling in that area for some time, and what has happened probably in the last 3 or 4 years since the government took away the first homeowners grant for established property, we've seen a real decrease in young buyers wanting to buy that established property purely for that that $7,000. And also, the stamp duty threshold went from $500,000 to $430,000.
Where are they going, do you think?
I think they're going further out.
Yeah.
Having to travel, Elkamos comes to my mind, and those types of areas for $450,000 to $500,000, you can buy a brand new home. All right, it's further out, but they get
the ocean. There are a lot of people these days who are not that bothered by being close to Perth. Joondalup might be their town centre.
Well, look, Joondalup certainly has all the infrastructure there, doesn't it? But a lot of people that I've sold to want to come back. So they've gone out there and realised, hey,
the dream isn't as exciting as it looks.
It depends on your work, I guess. But CBD and the Osborne Park is the next biggest business district too. So a lot of people in those areas that are working.
Quick jump over the freeway.
Yeah, and you got the Glendalough train station.
Yep,
that's close by, and the Stirling one too. So
all right, let's get more specific on those price points, like we always do. The cheapest thing we can buy is a flat.
As a flat, I saw a property on North Beach Drive come in at $145,000. That's a one-bedroom flat.
Yep.
And that was renovated, so it looked quite nice.
That's ridiculous.
It's cheap. But there are some in that pocket which have sold fairly recently that are 2x1, unrenovated for a similar price, $150 to $170.
Wow.
It's a cheap way to get in the market and be still very close to the city.
Okay. Interesting option for those who obviously want to get in cheap.
Yep.
We're going now into the 3x1s that are a couple of decades old or a few decades old.
Yep. 3x1s, interestingly, were at the 500 mark at some point, but as soon as the threshold dropped to 430, that seems to be where it
just brought it straight down.
Brought it straight down, progressively, but it seems to be that they won't go any further than that 430 mark because of that threshold.
It's not worth it.
Yeah. So, but look, you can get them cheaper. Don't get me wrong. It's depending on the size. Yep. You can get a 3x1 as low as $350.
Yeah, wow.
They are awesome value. I recall selling them, the smaller ones, $450. It's
There you
crazy. Some awesome value there.
But we've got those new... The cool thing about Tuart Hill is you've got this multi-generational development.
Yep.
So we've gone from the flats to the 3x1s,
Yep.
the 3x2s, and the 3x2s of the theatre.
Yep.
How much are these ones going for?
So your 3x2 without the theatre, can be between 5 and 525, and then so the ones with the theatre, they're around the 6, even as high as 640.
Wow.
Depending on the level of finish.
Yeah. And is that getting further south to the Jundana side of Tuart Hill?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
More particularly, say, Cape Street side, we always do quite well. But look, it sometimes depends. It depends on what's available at the time in your competition.
What's available in Jundana?
What's available in Jundana, what's available in Yokine.
Yep.
That's what your buyers are doing. So
they're not. I would have thought, Dom, that people aren't specific about I need to live in Tuart Hill or I need to live in Balcatta.
No.
The whole area is fairly homogenous.
That's
isn't
right.
it?
Correct. So I find buyers coming to our inspections are looking, between Yokine, Jundana, and Tuart Hill.
Yeah.
And even they'll branch out to Innaloo.
Yep.
That's another spot.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Development blocks. Can we get? Obviously, I know that there's handfuls of these sort of things left.
Yeah.
But if they ever do come up, what are we paying?
They're hard to come by, and I'm always looking for new opportunities for development sites. But look, I think the last one to sell was 820,000, and that's 1,012 square meters.
Uh-huh.
A couple of months before that, there was another that sold for 860.
What am I putting on that?
Well, that was an R30 lot, so you put 3 nice villas on there.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was talking that one that sold for 820 was only a couple of years ago. I had an auction across the road, and it sold for 950. Wow. So considerably lower than a few years ago. So there's some real opportunities for that.
It seems like if you can get one, I'm just trying to reverse and engineer the numbers in my head.
Yep.
It seems like if you can get one, even at today's prices of what you're selling them for, you can get it at 800 and something. There still seems to be something in it for the developer.
Well, as we say, for the developers, a little bit of fat in there for them.
Yeah.
Not as much as they used to make. But look, a developer or a builder, they need to buy blocks to have a job. So they're always chasing new opportunities. So as time progresses, there's not too many left.
Yeah. Where are your clients on the development side looking if they're not looking in Tuart Hill anymore? Is there still opportunities around that Jundana, Yokine area?
There is, but there's also some changes that City of Stirling have made that you've got a tree policy now. They've had to add trees into some of these lots so the villa becomes smaller. So some of them I've spoken to actually boycott the area and have gone further out.
Just getting out of the council.
Getting out of it because what they traditionally plonked on these blocks isn't the same. So we are getting a smaller unit, but I think City of Stirling recognise that we need more green, green.
Well, I think Stirling have shot themselves in the foot here. They went way too far. They pushed the needle way too far on Balga, Westminster, Nollamara, and Tuart Hill to a point as well. Yeah. And now they're trying to pull back all this sort of density movement, but it's at the expense of progress as well, I think. What I'm finding, especially on my side, I'm trying to stay clear on a development space of Stirling in some aspects, moving to Joondalup and surrounding councils, just because there seems to be less of a tight squeeze. Do you have any opinions on that?
There was some amendments to R40 where they allowed multi-res development.
For a while?
Yeah, for a while, going, I think it was 2013. And some of the first people that jumped on board that did very well, but I think everybody thought there's a dollar to be made here, and a lot of people jumped on board, and I don't think the City of Stirling realised what was going to happen.
Getting themselves into.
What they're getting themselves into. And look, like you said, Balga and Westminster and Nollamara had a lot of R40 in there, so a lot of these properties popped up, quite a number of them in Tuart Hill. And just getting back to that development opportunity, some of those blocks that were sold at 800, or selling at 800 today, I was selling them at 1.2 because they allowed multi-res.
Yeah,
and I don't know how many doors I knocked on at the time and said, hey, there's some changes happening here. There's a good opportunity to make some money. And look, I had the developers on a list, and we sold 4 or 5 in a few months. Back in 13, 14.
You'd hope that a lot of them got on and got it done before the
then
changes.
Unfortunately, I had a few of the developments to sell after all the apartments, so it was a bit of a glut. But that's changed. They're not allowing that anymore. So the council and the locals lobbied against WAPC, and they stopped it.
Well, it makes sense because they seem to have not gotten the parking thing right. And I think the whole point of this is parking. Certainly. You can't go and slap these boutique apartment developments, which I think are fantastic, but you can't go and do it and put your head in the sand about the fact that most people are a boyfriend and girlfriend, husband and wife, housemates who have got two cars. And where are they going to go?
they're on the street.
They're on the street and they're clogging up the streets.
That's what has annoyed most of the residents. And the other thing is, a lot of these properties were single level, and then you get this monster 8-apartment complex right next door. And
Yeah.
Look, they get over it, but it's changed. Sometimes people don't like that change. So, but look, it's only on Wanneroo Road now in Main Street.
That's where it should be.
Yeah.
And that's the point, because generally when it's on those major streets,
Yeah.
you can restrict the car issue,
Yeah.
because obviously they can't park on those roads anyway. So you have only certain types of tenants or buyers buying there, knowing you can only get one car in there. That's just part of the deal.
That's true.
One last question, Dom.
Yep.
We're going to ask you for the median house price.
Well, according to REWA stats, which follow quite well because all that information is quite accurate, it's 540,000 for Tuart Hill.
Okay. Now, that would be quite skewed by the high level of units in there,
That's
obviously.
Right. Yeah.
What would you do with that if you had that in your pocket?
I would probably put a little bit more in.
Okay.
I'd probably go to the 6 range, because there are a couple of opportunities in the area at the moment where, look, the block was 1,012 square metres, but someone's chopped it off and built a villa or a property at the back, and there's 600 square metres still available. An older home on there, but you still have the land content. So you're getting in the area for 600.
Getting land value.
You're getting land value.
Yep.
But you're going to have to spend a few dollars on the homes.
That's an interesting perspective. Not many people have considered that. But you know what? I guess that is just the reality. And we're always talking about the maturity of the market. And on a suburban level, there aren't many more mature suburbs, especially in development spaces, than Tuart Hill. I struggle to think of a suburb that started before Tuart Hill and has continued on with Tuart Hill in terms of development. So that's what you have to start being creative at that level on, thinking about making a good investment in a suburb like Tuart Hill.
Tuart Hill, I always promote it because I live and breathe it. But when buyers come to our inspections, they ask me, what do you predict in the future? And I'll always say that if you look at big cities like Sydney and Melbourne, if you're this close to the city, you can't go wrong. The prices are triple what they are in Perth. All right, it's going to take some time for us to catch up, but that's where progression is going to go, I believe. So,
well, the good point of Tuart Hill, especially given its faring to Morley Drive and Wanneroo Road and whatnot, this is where the whole Metronet idea is coming in around here. So to be on that border and a part of that inner ring of Metronet, I think you can't really go wrong.
It's certainly a space to keep your eye on in the future.
Dom, thank you very much for coming, and I appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
Love to have you in again and chat about Tuart Hill in the future.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Perth Property Show. If you've only just joined the conversation, you can catch up by heading over to our website, perthpropertyshow.com.au, subscribing to the podcast, or joining our Facebook page. Don't forget to tune in next Monday at 7 a.m. for more expert insights, local analysis, and suburb spotlights. Happy hunting!